Hey everyone, this isn't going to be your typical Destiny 2 kind of video you see from me where I solo a Grandmaster or a dungeon or something. No gameplay tips, instead more of a commentary, my thoughts kind of deal. Normally around this time of an expansion, I'm grinding this and that and just trying to be raid ready, but after my campaign experience yesterday, I felt the need to share my honest thoughts on the experience from a mainly story perspective, while going a bit into some of the other things I experienced yesterday. Before I start, I should preface by saying I am not by any means a lore expert. My knowledge of the game is mostly from the campaign cutscenes from Destiny 1 Vanilla through today, a bit of lore tidbits picked up from social media comments and the odd detail I pay attention to here and there in the seasonal storylines. I've been generally a very gameplay focused player, and I do skip a fair bit of dialogue with vendors in the seasons and even sometimes in the expansions up until this year and the last year. However, that being said, I tend to have a decent grasp of what's going on in the story. I do listen and pick up on the flow of missions with their dialogue and objectives with the right context provided, and I do care about where the story is going in Destiny. This brings me to the start of the Lightfall campaign, which, by the way, if it wasn't already obvious, there will be major spoilers discussed, so if you aren't down with that, then click off of it. But I will warn you that if you are invested or interested in the story at all, you are likely going to be pretty disappointed by the end of the campaign. At the start of the campaign, the Witness shows up with a pyramid fleet to Earth in a cutscene. Typical stuff, it was shown off in the trailers, great. We stow away on a ship headed to Neptune, shown in a trailer, great. Now we get into the first mission, and it's time to see what the things are all about. You fight some Cabal dudes, eventually you get to Neptune, and you're just exploring for the first time. It's kind of cool to look at because it's new. But suddenly 2 Cloud Striders show up. We find Strand completely at random with no build-up, and then the story just kind of continues? We're told that we need to protect the Veil or something, but we're never told what the Veil is at any point in the campaign. Why it matters, what the Witness wants with it. It just exists. After a bit, you get to a point where you go into Callus's ship on Neomuna, and you're trying to secure some device from him to help ensure that the Witness isn't able to get to the Veil. You fail, you have to leave, and fairly soon one of the Cloud Striders, Rohan, sacrifices himself at the end of a mission to destroy the device because using the strand powers makes your character too exhausted to do anything afterwards. Rohan's death was insignificant and felt shoved in for the trope. He had no build-up leading to his sacrifice, very little interaction with him in the campaign beforehand, and I found myself just not caring about that character. Rohan's apprentice, Nimbus, came across as generally too carefree in the campaign. Their dialogue was far too positive for the stakes at hand, and gave off the vibe of very Marvel-style humor. And after Rohan's death, Nimbus ended up being just annoyingly depressed sometimes, and too chipper the rest of the time. One other criticism I've seen about the Cloud Striders is that they seem not to care that we just showed up suddenly to their planet that's so secret this is the first time we have ever heard of it. No, it's just assumed we're on their side fighting Callus / the Witness / the Cabal and Vex enemies on Neomuna for some reason or other. The new subclass Strand interfered significantly with the pacing of the campaign story and was a needless tie-in as a plot point. Most, if not all, the missions had your character use Strand by interacting with a wispy green object that would give you temporary access to the subclass, then leave your character exhausted once it ran out. This exhaustion made sense the first time or few as Strand was unfamiliar, so of course we wouldn't understand how to utilize it in a way that didn't leave our character slowed down, unable to move. But the novelty of Strand was lost in how often we had it pop up in campaign missions, and by the end we seemed to have opportunities to pick it up left and right just out of principle, not because it was required to advance any of the storytelling or mission objectives. The grappling hook the subclass has is a major letdown. It has a traditional grenade cooldown, meaning any subclass that isn't a hunter can use it occasionally, unless there are preset grapple points available to swing from, as those refill your grapple on use. The issue here is that these grapple points are exclusively on Neomuna, and are very sparse post-campaign. Using the grapple to explore feels pointless, because everywhere on the planet, at least to my knowledge from a lengthy play session, can be reached without it. This also prompts me to explain my criticism of the destination itself, which feels very empty and very similar gameplay-wise to other Destiny destinations. There's no grappling hooks swinging around the cyberpunk city or climbing skyscrapers to traverse dense buildings. There's no interesting exposition regarding the society's inhabitants, as they're all digitized holograms. Holograms. They're so advanced, they're built into holograms, exactly one of which you are ever given a chance to interact with as a vendor. There's little to no backstory given or reason to defend these people brought up in the campaign, save for one mission where you are told to go save their data server or whatever must be preserving them. But why do I need to care about hologram people when the Witness / Darkness / Cabal are everywhere fighting around me in this physical planet trying to do something? And that brings me to the campaign's lackluster ending. The final mission has you go deep underground to find the Veil. Before you can head inside, though, you have to do an extremely drawn-out defense outside the building against wave after wave of enemies. This section had a couple interesting odd bits, like the turrets standing around shooting, the good Cabal coming to back you up, and the orbital strike laser you could use to destroy enemy tanks. But it lasted so long that the charm and positive points were lost because it's the final mission. We're here to see what's finally going to happen. Once you get inside and you traverse downward a ways, you see what the Veil actually is. But even then, you still aren't told what the Veil does or why it matters so much. And somehow, through all the distance you traveled underground to get to it, Callus gets to the Veil first. Callus is massive. There's no massive hole dug into the ground to show how he possibly got to it first. Can he use darkness powers to teleport now? I have no idea, because the game never told or showed any sign of it. The fight itself was very underwhelming, and the majority of Callus's attacks didn't even load the first time I played the fight, only after I wiped once. When the fight was over, Callus's in-game model disappeared, but in the cutscene appeared as an odd darkness tree thing similar to Rolk at the end of last year's Valve the Disciple raid. This felt jarring, but this isn't even the biggest issue I have with that cutscene. In the cutscene, our characters notice that our ghost has suddenly become possessed by the Witness and is slowly moving towards the Veil to do something. But everyone just stands there and watches in shock instead of taking action. So we essentially just let the Witness interact with the Veil through our ghost, somehow then gain the ability to cut a hole in the Traveler and walk into it to do something. What did the Witness do, and why? Good question. I'd sure love to tell you if it was ever explained in the story, but it wasn't. This campaign story was a major letdown considering the massive tease the Witness villain had last year, and the hints of it being thrown around every season since. This should have been the time for answers, major story developments, high stakes, loss. Instead, I found myself by the end of the campaign just waiting and hoping for it to end, so I could do quests and start leveling my character for the upcoming raid. I couldn't take the entirety of the last mission seriously, and the cutscenes did nothing whatsoever to change my mind. I have other critiques here and there, such as the Osiris training course mission having a lengthy boss fight to play through thanks to the giant laser wall constantly going around the arena, the vendors in the tower you speak to after the final Witness cutscene, saying the Traveler is gone even though everyone still has their Traveler-given powers, which only go away if something ever actually happens to the Traveler, and our Guardian and Ghost somehow knowing every patrol-related NPC on Neomuna perfectly well, despite no introductions to them. And the little puka fish things, they're just there too. They seem to just understand Strand or something, and because we saw the fish, it inspired us to be able to learn Strand better. That's all the explanation we receive. The puka fish seemed to be made to look good in trailers and marketing, which they did. And it would be acceptable if there were real, true, significant story beats that took place, but nothing happened. We were just on Neomuna, fighting Cabal, being essentially forced to learn Strand even though it doesn't even matter by the end of the campaign, and nothing we ever do has any significance by the end, because the witness just possesses Argos to be able to cut open the Traveler. The raid isn't out yet, but the raid and post-raid story would need to be beyond stellar to keep my interest in the franchise beyond this season. As it stands, however, I may be quitting Destiny for good within the next month or so, as this expansion was a major letdown for what should have been a significant penultimate chapter, the Infinity War before Destiny's endgame. I hate to be negative about Destiny, because I want it to be better. I want it to be a game I enjoy. But I cannot ignore these issues and pretend like it's fine. This is a slap to the face to anyone who cares about the story, and it feels like a giant waste of my time. Thank you for watching, and I hope that if you're finding Destiny fun right now, that it stays that way.